basically, I'd never heard about GIST, never thought I'd be involved with a charity in any way, apart from maybe when I retired, being helpful in some way. You know, we considered ourselves to be a fairly normal family, and then my daughter Eve suddenly became very unwell, was found to be severely anemic, and was subsequently diagnosed with GIST. The middle slide, she was 15 at the time, just before her 16th birthday. And the middle slide shows the scan, and this big circle here was the GIST that she presented with, and unfortunately it was one of those GISTs that had already spread or metastasized to her liver. The endoscope showed that these tumours were protruding into her stomach and bleeding, and that was why she was so anemic. So it stirred all sorts of emotions in me, my family, and we were really very fortunate to be pointed in the direction of GIST Support UK. First contact was with Judith, which was a complete revelation, because up until that point we'd had a few weeks of just feeling totally lost and very depressed. And Judith gave us the help we needed, the hope we needed, that there was you know, a life moving forward, and that there was hope that we could you know, keep Eve on a good, healthy path. So what it prompted when we came into contact with GIST Support UK was an introduction to other patients, which was also very helpful, and an introduction to all sorts of specialists that up until that point, obviously I had no understanding of who or where these people were based, etc. So it opened up all sorts of opportunities and a discussion about there must be more that can be done, rather than just be a patient and accept that there aren't any particular treatments. We wanted to do something. So we wrote to a selection of doctors that we found on Google, and a number of them responded saying they'd like to help. And you've heard the name Ramesh Balusu, or Dr. Balusu. He wrote back and said he wanted to do more than just assist. He'd like to lead the initiative because he had a number of both paediatric and wild-type patients, and he wanted to find answers for them. So Judith, Dr. Balusu, David and I met in a pub in Oxford and discussed for 4 hours what sorts of things would be needed, and they tended to be things that were kind of what I'd call an infrastructure, which would potentially be beneficial for any kind of programme focusing on this particular type of GIST. As it happens, some of these things are helpful to GIST patients in general. So the idea that all patients should be registered, that's really something which needs to happen for all GIST patients, and obviously to be able to identify where patients are, particularly who are wild type in the PAWS GIST context. A minimum doctor's data set is something which we kind of wish would happen, so that any doctor who's got a patient presenting with particular symptoms of anemia, bloating, unexplained and persistent indigestion, all these sorts of things might trigger the thought, could this be a GIST? Hence our poster over there. Having a specialist clinic and having a tumour bank, all these things were things which we said, really, we need these things if we're going to stand a chance at some point in the future to get research going. So this was our list, and obviously ultimately we're looking to find a cure. So 4 years ago we set that as the agenda, and since then, obviously, sorry, I've used an old slide here because my hard disk on my other computer went, but the progress since that time was obviously we've set about raising funds, because if you've got money, then hopefully you can buy things even if somebody can't naturally provide them. And the idea of raising money was to be in a position to fund a specialist clinic for PAWS GIST patients. And this whole idea of a clinic was inspired by the only other clinic of its type in the world, which is at the National Institutes of Health in Washington, DC in America. They're about 5 or so years ahead of us in terms of having set up a clinic, but having been to this clinic and benefited from their knowledge and the recommendations they were able to make in relation to Eve, it basically made me feel we need this particular service in this country, because unless somebody's actually looking at this disease and collating information and pulling all the data together, how are they ever going to have an understanding of what's causing it in detail, and have access to sufficient patients and samples of those patients to be able to conduct research? The only way to get this moving is to pull everything together into one place. So you'll hear later on from Professor Andy Hall, but he's been absolutely fantastic and helped us to set up a national GIST tumour bank, which there's some information on our board outside, there's some information on our desk, and basically any patient who is about to have surgery, we hope that you will be able to help us in getting any samples of tumours that are removed sent to the National GIST Tumour Bank, so that it becomes a resource for research. So it doesn't matter if you're wild type or just standard GIST, that those samples need to go there. And if you've had surgery in the past, there will be tumour samples saved in the local hospital where you had your surgery. So ideally we'd like those samples transferred to the tumour bank. If that's not possible, at least we'd like them registered with the tumour bank, so that at least they can be traced should we need to use them. And obviously there's a national GIST registry which is in the process of being set up and merged with the NHS sort of registry on tumours, etc. So hopefully in the not too distant future there will be probably the best example of a registry that's been in existence for GIST to date. Oh, there we go. I suppose the main point of this update now, we've been talking for 4 years about wanting a clinic, raising money for a clinic, trying to find patients that might be interested in going to a clinic. The most exciting thing is the fact that we have actually now had our very first clinic. It was launched in March, and the whole point of this clinic is basically it pulls paediatric and wild type GIST patients together. We've got a team of doctors whose specialist subject is GIST, and they have a particular interest in paediatric and wild type GIST, and any patient that attends the clinic, it's a two-way sort of benefit. Basically we're able to pull together the information, the data, etc. to help hopefully be the stimulus for research, but patients will get a personalised treatment plan which is basically imparted back to your own specialist. It may be that the treatment plan is a reinforcement of the plan you're already on, but it may be there are other things that the team collectively can come back to you with and say, well, have you thought of this? Has this been considered in your particular case? And you will get some extra options. In Eve's case, the benefit we had from going to the clinic was that there were some extra tests that were recommended, because unfortunately she did have to have her stomach removed in November, and there's been a few issues since then, and these tests hopefully will help her to cope with some of the side effects she's currently having. But the other things that will come from this, you may have heard of genomic sequencing, which is like an extra investigation of what potential mutations there might be. At the moment, no mutation has been identified within the wild type GIST groupings, so hopefully there can be some more testing done which will lead to identification of where mutations are, and having done that, hopefully then identifying which drugs could target those particular mutations when they're found. I hope I've explained that properly. This clinic obviously consists of Dr. Belusu and an alliance of GIST specialists who are from all over the UK. They consist of oncologists, surgeons, pathologists, geneticists, specialist nurses, and there is also at Adam Brooks a project team who sort of do everything in advance of the clinic and post-clinic in terms of project managing it. There's a standard operating procedure that's been agreed, and obviously they make arrangements for the clinic. My involvement is from the patient perspective. My grandiose title is Patient Director of the PAWS GIST Initiative, but at the end of the day it's really just somebody who hopefully can scoop up all the loose ends and make sure everyone's got everything they need so that things happen and they work properly. So we have a website, a PAWS GIST clinic website. Basically, this is just a snapshot of it. It does moving things, and there's an awful lot of information on there. It details when the next clinic is. It also allows you to, answer hopefully the sorts of questions you're likely to have if you're diagnosed as a PAWS GIST patient. I'll whiz through these. It's also the means by which you register for the clinic, and registration information that you supply there goes directly through to the project team at Addenbrooke's, and once you've registered, obviously your interaction as far as the clinic and providing your previous medical background all happens directly with the hospital. That's the address of the PAWS GIST clinic website. And in terms of what happened in our first clinic, I mean, there was some news coverage. We were on the BBC, we were on Radio 2. I gather we trended on Twitter for about... on TV, yeah. So we trended on Twitter for a microsecond probably before something else became the trend. But it was quite exciting on the day. 10 patients registered for the first clinic, some of whom are here today. 8 were female, 2 were males. There was quite an age range. Eve was the youngest at 19. In terms of the tumour location, obviously it was mainly stomach, 1 duodenum, 1 small bowel. And if I page down again, this map sort of shows where geographically they came from. So there was quite a spread of the blue dots actually show where patients came from. So I think there's 3 from London, 1 from Bristol, 3 from the Midlands, 1 from Middlesbrough, and 1 from up north, and 1 from Cambridge. So we had quite a mix of places that people came from. The feedback was very positive from everyone. Basically, it was really interesting to see that patients, obviously each patient had their own individual session with the specialist, which lasted something like 45 minutes to an hour. And the rest of the time, obviously, they kind of had to occupy themselves, but the occupying of themselves tended to be more discussions with other patients, because most of them hadn't met previously a wild-type patient. So it was quite interesting for them to compare notes, understand what sort of treatments they'd had, what sort of experiences they'd had, and I think they all found it very, very helpful. So in the future, because I'm not supposed to talk for very much longer, the plan is that there will be 3 clinics a year. The next one's going to be in July. We're currently trying to finalise the dates, but I think it's going to be something around about the 18th of July. So any specialists here who have wild-type patients, obviously we would like, we're going to send a communication out again, but we'd like obviously for any other patients to be made aware of this so that they can come along as well. And after that there should be one in November. Obviously there's the GIST Tumour Bank, which you'll hear more about this afternoon. And we're hoping, we've had quite a lot of interest in the PAWS GIST clinic from European specialists, because in the same way that we haven't had such a facility up until now, the PAWS GIST clinic that we've got is only the 2nd in the world. So Europe could do with similar sort of clinics, and I think there's been quite a lot of interest in potentially doing that. We have been since about 2011 trying to get recognition within the NHS of the existence of a clinic. Now that we've actually physically got one, hopefully that will speed up a little bit more, and we are still talking about or the desire to get a specialist commissioning status for this clinic so that it becomes standard practice for any patient who's newly diagnosed, for their doctor to understand that really at some point in their treatment plan, hopefully earlier on, they can be seen at the clinic to actually get the best view on treatment plans for that particular patient. And obviously we're wanting to continue fundraising. Now, we've done the fundraising to get the clinic started. We've really got to step it up a gear now, because ideally we need to be in a position to fund research. So the fundraising isn't going to cease, it's going to step up a notch from now. Tony Benn, well-known Bristolian, or somebody who was practicing in Bristol, said that hope is the fuel of progress and fear is the prison in which you put yourself. As far as GIST is concerned, I'm really very hopeful, and our hope is that we're going to continue and find a cure for PAWS GIST. The clinic is just the start, and as I say, we need to step it up a notch now. So the future is our Alliance of Doctors in the UK, collaborating with both the US and European researchers. Just as a matter of interest, since Eve's operation in November, we've had three wild-type GIST operations that have happened, and those samples from each of those operations have been sent. 2 of them have gone to America, fresh samples with the hope of growing cell lines. They've also been sent to 2 outlets in the UK to attempt cell line growth, and we've also got other research going on, plus those samples have gone to the tumour bank. Ideally, that's what should be happening with every sample. So that's it really, that's an update on PAWS GIST. Thank you very much.